joining me, Danny. Do you want to start by telling me a little bit about Leo Group and Omega Proteins?
I suppose Leo Group was formed in 1992 after the death of my father in 93. Previously, it was we came from a farming family that bred mink for the fur industry. So when we lost Dad in 93, we changed the name to Danny Sawrij Limited, and that's how that was formed. And on the back of that, as the business grew and expanded, we had different divisions, and we set up a group that then controlled all operations that the family was involved with, from farming, then going into rendering, going into pet food, fuels, etc., etc. So that's really how it all came about from Dad, because we lost Dad 28th of August 1993. He died of a heart attack at 65 years old, and it was a shock, and probably put me into a bit of a shock mode, and probably knocked me back and made me more ambitious to take the business and grow it.
So what was it about your father in that business that inspired you to grow it into what it is now?
I think when I was born, I was the last of one of six, and there was 7 years between me and my brother, who were number 5. So I think my dad more or less became, well, he was a very close friend, and it wasn't like I would say, Dad, I were a lot more disciplined with my children than my dad were disciplined with me. So I know that for a fact. So he would do crazy things, but he was a lot older when he had me. So was Mom, and they called me the mistake. And I probably got preferential treatment. I was spoiled. Any food I wanted, I always got the food. And I used to go to cattle markets with Dad when I was 10 or 11, 12. And if I said I didn't feel so well and I would throw it in, he'd say, "Don't tell your mom." And then he'd pick me up at the end of the road, and we'd go out in a van collecting offal in bins. So I were really close with Dad, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you saw that hard work and what it took to be successful, and you wanted to carry that on by the sound of it.
Oh, for sure. But always when I were at school, when I was at junior school, Mum would take me to Booker's Cash and Carry, and I would buy a box of Yorkie bars and chocolate bars, and I would take them into school. And if they cost me 4 or 5 pence, I'd sell them for 10 or 11, and I'd make 2, 3, 4, 5, £6 a week when I was 10-year-old, just selling things like that at school. So I always had an ambition to build a successful business.
You always had an entrepreneurial flair.
Yeah, all the way through, yeah.
So since we're on the subject of you being at school, what is your background? Where are you actually from? And how did you get where you are now?
Well, I'm from Halifax in West Yorkshire. I went to the local school just down the road from still where I live now, Booth Town School, and I stayed there till I was about 8 years old. And it's a long story there. I left there at 8 because I was being bullied. You won't imagine it, but I was being bullied. And I went to a school called St. Mary's, which was 2 miles away, where I met some friends. And then we went from 11-year-old, we went to the senior school, which was Catholic High. So when I was at St. Mary's, Mum always wanted me to take the 11 plus, and I didn't want to leave my pals, and I wanted to go to Catholic High, so I purposely failed the 11 plus. So I didn't have to go to the school that she wanted me to go to. And Catholic High I went to at 11, but I finished school at 14 because I wasn't the best of pupils. I had no interest in school, and I used to think, why am I bothered about what happened 300 years ago in history or in geography? I could read, I could add up, and I wanted to go to work. So I was disruptive at school, and top and bottom, they told me not to come back at 14. So I left school at 14 and come out into the big wide world, and then went to work. And that's how it all started, really.
It's amazing how many entrepreneurs have said that in this podcast, that they weren't interested in school. It just didn't do it for them, and they left at 14 or 15 or 16, whatever the age was that you were allowed to leave then, and went off into work, and they've never looked back.
No, but with all of that, what I weren't interested at school, I am now. Like the royal family, I I think they're fantastic. And I read in history what happened 200, 300 years ago about the formation of the royal family, what went on. And it does interest me now, things that happened 200, 300, 400 years ago. So your mind must evolve and change at certain times in life. And it's probably something that we should take on board, thinking that every child should be a scholar. They come through at different periods in life, whatever that might be, where you're focused at 11 to 16 to 18. That's what you go to school, you learn this, and it's done that way. And it's probably the wrong way to look at it, but that's the system as it is today.
Yeah. Do you think that you're more interested in scholarly pursuits now because you've quenched that thirst of starting a business and getting out into work? You're already doing that. That's fulfilled, but that was what was driving you when you were young.
Sure. But I remember the arguments Mum and Dad would have because she knew that we're truanting from school. She knew the bad reports, and Dad would just say, listen, if he works, that's all he needs to do. And then they'd argue, and I'd hear them when I were up in the bedroom arguing. So as time went on and I lost Dad, got into my late 20s, when my own family were born, I realised Mum was right and Dad was wrong. Because I can't spell now, doing emails and things like that. I need assistance, so I'm not the greatest at writing. But adding up numbers and calculations and fractions, I don't need a calculator. I can just do that instantly. So I made sure from what I'd seen were wrong, and probably that Mum was right. So I ensured that the children went to school. None of them, if I heard that they played truant or were bad at school, I would go crackers. So I was, and probably too hard with them, really. I was over focused on disciplining them. Yeah, and good job there. The good mum who were a bit in the middle of the road, she would keep them right and say, you're being too hard on them. And I say, look, they've got to be right. They've got to have a work ethic. They've got to be disciplined. They've got to be kind. They've got to be polite, etc. And I would just ram it into them.
Has it been successful?
Oh, yeah, no, and I'm proud of all three.
Great.
Very much, yeah.
Good. And then when you left school at 14 and they told you not to come back, what was your first job? What did you go and do?
Hey, my first job, I never worked for anybody. My first job, our bank manager who banked my dad was a gentleman called Bernard Whiteley from Barclays Bank. And my dad rung him up in his foreign accent. He said, Bernard, can I see you? He said, yes, Leo, no problem. So I went with my dad to go see the bank manager down in Halifax, Bernard Whiteley, and he gave me a checkbook. And he said, what are you going to do, Danny? I said, I'm going to go cattle markets, buying and selling cattle. I'm going to buy cars. And I'm going to do a few more offal bins collection. And it flourished and went on from there. And I remember the first time somebody told me about some cattle up in the Lake District, and I didn't have a driving license. So I give my brother-in-law £50 to drive me up to the Lake District. So I went and bought all these cattle in the Lake District for £3,500. I can still remember it clear as a day. And I come back and my dad said, where have you been? So I said, I bought these cattle up the Lake District, right? How much you paid for them? I said, £3,500. He said, how are you going to pay for them? I said, well, I'll give one of them checks that Bernard said I could buy with. He said, you haven't got enough money in there. So then I had to ring Bernard Whiteley and told him what I'd done. And he said, so what are you going to do with them? So I said, I'm going to do this here, do that there. He said, and when will you get the money back? I said, I'll be 3 to 4 weeks. He said, are you sure? So he said, yeah. Anyway, the check all went through. I brought them back. I thought, I'm under pressure here. But I did it all in about 2.5, 3 weeks. I sold them all again. And I made over £1,500 clear profit. So that's in 1982, 81. Yeah.
Was there ever any apprehension with that? Because one of the things that we hear an awful lot of is people taking that step out into self-employment, which you've never had to take the step into, you already just did it. But was there ever any apprehension with I've bought something that I can't afford, or how am I going to do this, or I've committed myself to something?
No,
how am I going to do it?
I knew it was going to work. I knew the value of something. I knew where I was going to place them. I'd seen other things sell like that in the last 3 to 4 weeks. So I knew it all. And I even there was a mill owner down in Halifax, and he was a big mill owner, and they called him David Fairbank. He come up and bought like a third of them. And so I delivered them to him, or the wagon delivered them. He said, come down and I'll pay you. So I went down to get paid, and this, you'll laugh at this, he paid me all in £50 notes. I had never seen a £50 note. So there were £2,000 all in £50 notes. I come back, and my dad said, did he pay you? I said, yeah, he's paid me. £50 notes, Dad. He said, you crazy? He said, that's not real money. He went crackers with me. So I rung the bank manager. He said, fetch him down. And it was all legal currency, the £50 notes. But remember, a man only got paid £100 a week then, or even less. So I went down to the bank, put them in, went into the account, just went from there. Did you bits of stories you remember in your life as you go on?
Yeah, but they're the best stories.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah. So they're always there fresh in your mind, and you can tell the story, and people will say, well, how did it happen? What did he take on from his dad? And like when I took on from Dad, when I took the business on, there were 5 people employed. So what Dad did in a year, we do now in 7 hours. So it's just everything has multiplied on.
Mm-hmm. So from buying those cattle in the Lake District and selling them and making a profit and clearing your check,
yeah,
how did that then evolve to where you are now?
So what happened then? I took on Dad's business, which was a mink breeding business for the fur industry, and that again, you never knew if you were going to earn any money until the end of the year. Okay, and the end of the year would be December and January. And I remember from a young age that if we had a good year, we had a good Christmas. If we had a bad year, Christmas wasn't as good. Everybody were quiet. So I thought, I don't want this. So I thought, what else can we do? So I started breeding maggots for fishing, because you bred the maggots and within 6 days you sold them and you got the cash. So I thought, if I can breed the mink and cash flow it from the maggot business, I'll be on the right track. And then when there's a bad season in mink, I won't sell them. And when there's a good season, we can sell them all. And that's how it evolved, because I started in the maggots, and by 1992, we were the biggest producer of maggots in Europe. So I supplied all of UK, I went into Belgium, I went into Holland, I went into France, delivering maggots all over Europe. And that became a good business. That generated cash every week, which then went into the business to buy more trucks, to build sheds, and grow the business on the back of that. And once that started, you just had more confidence. People knew you were a real player. You could go to an abattoir and take 50 tons or 80 tons. You managed it, and then we start supplying other rendering businesses throughout the UK with raw materials that they then put in the processing plants to produce meat and bone meals and oils. Mm-hmm. And it evolved from that's genuinely how it started. To get enough capital, I started buying investment properties then that I'd let out. And then when BSE came in 1996, I thought, we need a rendering plant. And we looked for one. I found a site in 98. I demolished it and built a brand new site. And lucky again, 2001, 2002, foot and mouth came. So it filled the factory immediately. And the site here in Penrith, I used to drive up and fetch raw material in the late 90s on a night or on a Saturday and Sunday. So I knew the site very well. Mm-hmm. At the time, it was owned by an Irish company called IAWS. And when I built the plant, they come to me and they said, Danny, I want to buy you. And I said, we're not for sale. I said, family business, we want to keep it. He said, look, Danny, we want to buy you. I said, we're not for sale. So tongue in cheek, I said, Mick, I said, I'll buy you. And he started laughing. I'll buy your business. So then just after foot and mouth, late 2001, 2002, he come to me, he said, do you know when you said you'd buy us? the Penrith site, Aberdeen, Dumfries. He said, "Oh, were you serious?" I said, "Yes." So top and bottom, within 6 months, I'd bought it. And the wife went crackers. She says, "I never see you as it is. What are you going to do?" So I said, "We need it because we've got one rendering plant, but we need one to do chicken." I'm more pleased than anything to be able to say that we can collect a dead animal, whatever kind of animal it might be. We can make electricity from that dead animal. We can make fuel to go in an aeroplane from that dead animal. And then the remainder we can make into a water which is good enough to go into the river. But more importantly, we use it on site to produce steam for the process. So 100% is used, not 96, 97 or 98, but 100% of a dead animal, which many years ago would not have the use it has today. And I think the general public, do not take agriculture as important as what they should. Agriculture for food and agriculture for the environment in relation to species and relation to organic matter that animals are producing. And there is a stigma with farming that we're doing damage to the environment, etc., runoff into the rivers. All that negativity is publicized. Some of it is actually correct, but a lot of it isn't. And we're also in a position that farmers are pushed into doing this to produce cheaper and cheaper food, which doesn't necessarily mean it's better for the general public. There is a lot of information going about food and what we're eating, processed food, and the effect that's going to have on people's bodies and health in 20 and 30 years' time. And I do believe we are going to go back to the old-fashioned way of farming and producing meat from grass, which in turn produces the feces from the animals, which the bugs eat in the atmosphere. The organic matter goes onto the ground, which then stops runoff because we have runoff from ground that has no organic matter added. So again, people think we can just plant vegetables and vegetables will grow, but they won't grow without fertilizer. And the best fertilizer is organic fertilizer. So if you go back hundreds of years, my view is everything's been put here for a reason. It's how we use it. And a lot of the times we're not using it correctly, or we're overusing it and over farming. Like a lot of dairy farmers today, to survive for the next generation, they used to milk 100 cows. Then they went to 200, then 300, then 500, then 700 and 1,000 cows. And that's all pushed by the retailers insisting that milk is produced cheaper. But on the back of it, they are producing it cheaper, but that is having detrimental effects on the environment and runoff, etc. So they all don't fall in that category, but it's getting that happy medium, and that's easier said than done. Then there's the quality of the food that's produced here in the UK and Europe. And I can honestly, categorically say it is the safest food in the world. And all the government need to do is understand how and what the farmer does and support that farmer, that producers, as we produced 30, 40 years ago, but using new feeding systems, but without over farming. And again, that's critical to our business, to the food, the pets, the energy, etc.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a plan when you started with breeding those maggots?
Yeah.
And your plan was, let's get some sustainable cash flow. Did you think then that you would be sitting where you are now?
No, the only plan I had was to make sure the kids went to a good school, make sure when they got married, or if they got married, I could help them to buy a house and set them on the right track. That was it. That was it. And it evolves from there. Probably at back of your mind, you want to probably you think about your father to keep his name. Yeah.
Mhm. And how did the evolution of the business come into fruition? Was it just conversations and right place, right
Business
time?
is conversation, isn't it? You meet somebody, have a discussion, you talk about certain aspects, you think that would fit in or it wouldn't fit in, and you build relationships with people who you're in business with. And very funny, a lot of people who you do business with become more than business colleagues, they become friends, probably because you have a lot in common. They have a lot of same thoughts of what you have, and you share your passion, and that's people like me today. It's a lot of you take Cumbria today, how many successful people there are around here. And even though I've only been here 20 years, you feel like you've known them 30, 40 years, and you can ring them and go and have a cup of tea with them, and an hour's gone and you think 10 minutes has gone, because conversation just flows because there's so many like-minded people.
Mm-hmm. So if you had to distill down your business ethos into one phrase, so you had to say, this is what I think about business, what would that phrase be?
Just hard work. Nothing beats hard work. Hard work. And when you're tired, just hard work. And when you're tired, thinking what you want to do, and then just think there's only 12, 15 hours and then I'll go to sleep again. Because when the maggot seasons were on, genuinely, I didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night. I would go to bed at 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I'd be back up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So by the end of the maggot season, which was August, I was absolutely on my knees. And I used to wake up and my eyelids, I'd go like that to open them because they wouldn't open. And do you know what I look forward to? Going to bed at night. But I knew I had a day's work in front. So just hard work, that's all.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds as though you've got some really deep-seated motivators there as well. Your family, the goals that you had for them, you know, preserving your father's name. And that must have just really kept you going in those hard times.
Well, Dad came in after the war and Mum came in, so they were both immigrants. So they won't have had the best of time when they come over here. But we were never hungry, we were never cold. And probably that's why I were always a Remainer, and I always believe anybody should go anywhere, but don't expect the country's got to keep you. So Dad thought the world of this country because he left Ukraine, he came here and he was safe. So he could say what he wanted to do, but he wouldn't take anything from the country. Like even when he got his pension, he paid into it. He never drew his pension because he said they've given me enough to come and live here. So I don't want them to pay me to look after me. I can look after myself. So bits of things like that, really.
Mm-hmm. So the next question is about non-negotiable behaviours of people that work with you. Obviously, you're very driven and you do so much hard work, and you can see that in what you've built. But what do you look for in the people that work with you and work for you?
Hard work and honesty. And with hard work and honesty, you can do anything and you can achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Hard work and honesty, that's all. You don't have to have a master's degree. You don't have to have been at university. You just have to, what you say, do it. Don't come out with any bullshit. Don't make 3 sentences when 2 words will do. That's it. Just hard work and honesty. That's all it is.
Is there a third ingredient that you look for in people?
No, but say hard work and honesty. That's it. Hard work and honesty. Yeah.
Honesty.
And probably commitment and drive from an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there is certain people that want to look after the family, want to bring the family, want to go on in life and succeed. And somebody will say, well, what would you call is succeeding in life? Well, succeeding in life is making sure that you can help others, making sure that you leave something behind or more than what you've got, and make sure that any association with people, they have the same thought process of what you do, and be kind to people. And people say, You're not always kind, Danny. I am aggressive, and if something isn't right, people will know that it's not right. But I forget it 20 minutes afterwards, and I would sit and have a cup of tea with them. I don't hold anything. When we do it, I want it to be done right. And I try to instill that through in our own people. But everybody doesn't look the same way. Like my son will say, he looks at things differently than me. He'll say, Dad, you're too hard on people. And you can't be hard like you were with people 20, 30 years ago. So as business life goes on, it doesn't stay the same. You've got to change with it. Business ain't going to change. You've got to change and adapt with how things are evolving.
Yeah. And honesty is a really interesting one, isn't it? Because there can be cultures in some businesses where people are nervous about being honest for fear of repercussions.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be the case, should it? Because if people make mistakes, the business is going forward. If they don't make mistakes, they aren't doing it right. So my thing is, if you do 10 things, all you've got to do is get 6 or 7 right. Don't worry about the 3 you've got wrong. Think about the 6 or 7 you've got right. So pro rata, you're winning. And as long as you're winning, that's it.
Yeah. How do you handle those instances where you're not winning, where you've had 6 or 7 of them go wrong and you've only won 3?
We never have that. We work harder to make sure that they do go right. We've never had an instance in all my time of being in business where something has gone wrong and we couldn't get it right. We've worked and we've addressed it, and we've got it right. We have got it right. But that's in an acquisition of a business. In the day-to-day of businesses, the human error is one of the biggest things that happen in your business. And probably because I'm close to it, I see it and I think, how can we do that wrong? We got it wrong 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and we say we're going to put this in place so it can't go wrong. And it still does go wrong. It's a corner's cut. And that's me probably going into a lot of detail about what business is like. Yeah.
Now, this is an interesting observation on my part.
Yeah.
Do you see challenges in business, or do you just see a problem to be solved?
Problem to be solved. Yeah. Because business is a challenge every day. So you have that challenge that comes with being an owner of a business. Every day when you get up, there's a challenge. What you've got to look at is how we solve the problems and look to the future to reduce them problems.
Now, the next question, I hope is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, not what others would say of you, but in your opinion, what is your superpower?
My probably work ethos, that I can still, if I have to do, I could still work 2 days without go to sleep if I had to do. Not saying that I want to do, and how can I say, brag about it, but if I had to do it, I still could do it. I wouldn't return to it. I would make sure I would stop somewhere until it was right. And that's just been a work ethos. That came from Mum's side, not Dad. Dad wasn't an hard worker, but he was a good talker. But Mum was a real hard worker. Mum had 6 children, and genuinely, there's few and far between ladies that could work like she worked. Like, they got the first house, they had lodgers up there. She had 6 children. She fed us all. She worked on the farm feeding the mink. Mum would be up at 5 o'clock in the morning every morning, and then go to bed 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. So she'd go up, work on the farm, get the mink food ready, etc. Go back down at 8:30, get everybody up for school, feed them, give them the breakfast, put them in the car, take them to school. And probably my eldest sister become like our what would you say, godmother, because she was 20 years older than me, 25 years older. So she'd help mum get everybody ready for school. So you remember all them things. And you remember as they all grew up and got married, all the birthdays that they'd have, because mum were old fashioned, everybody's birthday. She'd make a cake, put all the candles on. Everybody at night had to come and sing happy birthday. And that was just what mum were. But mum had a great work ethos. Yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like you've pulled some really amazing characteristics from both of your parents.
Yeah. Everybody says I was lucky that way because I got mum's work ethic and I can speak to people like dad could. Dad could go anywhere and speak with people, but mum wouldn't. Mum would be quiet, but dad would be always at the front having a conversation and asking questions and generally speaking about things and being a bit of a joker.
Are your siblings similar to you, or have you all got different elements of personalities from your parents?
I don't know. I would say they look at things differently than what I do. Yeah, they've all got a drive in what they do. Will it be a stronger drive as me? I'm not sure. Would I change them? No. And am I lucky? Yes. So I'm lucky that way. I wouldn't change them. And none of them are lazy. None of them are disrespectful. They've all got morals. They've all got work ethic. So no, I'm. If somebody says, "Are you happy?" I'm happy. Yeah.
Good. Now, what is the most common misconception of you, and what would you say to set it straight?
Probably getting worked up and losing my temper and shouting and upsetting people from me thinking, how can't they see it and how can they make the same mistake again? Them thinking that I'm shouting at them because I'm mad, but I don't hold out afterwards. Probably I'm better at it. I'm not perfect, but I am better because I know it upsets people. But I don't mean it when I say something about work. Within 15 minutes, I forget about it. I don't hold something for 2 hours or 3 hours. Once I've said it, that's it. It's gone. I move on. Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want a sandwich? What happened an hour ago is forgotten an hour afterwards.
Yeah, I think sometimes people can be perceived as aggressive, can't they, when actually they're just very passionate.
Yeah, well, that would be me. That would be me, yeah. And I'm probably too aggressive, and I go like that sometimes. But I was worse 20 years ago than what I am now. But it doesn't mean it should be accepted. You see, when people close to you say it and they keep saying it, they must be right. They wouldn't say it if it wasn't right. And then when you think about it, and as you get older, you do get wiser, and you think they're probably right. But life is that fast, or when you've got so much work, you're doing the work of 4 or 5 people, and it goes on, the next thing's done, the next meeting, the next discussion, the next plan, and life just goes dum 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 dum. Even when you go away, you don't go away because you're on the telephone, you're doing emails, you've sold something, you've got customers that want to speak to you. There's never a time that a customer can't ring me, whatever night or day. They ring me. They'd ring me at 9, 10 o'clock at night. If they rung at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd pick the phone up. Oh, I'm sorry, Danny, I didn't realise it was that time in the UK. So I always sleep with the phone at the side of the bed. And it's how I built the business. So you've got to adapt and change and see things that are right and see things that are wrong and do more of the right things and try and improve the wrong things.
And what would you tell your teenage self?
Okay, well, do you know what I would tell them? Count to 20 before you answer it. Think about the consequences of what you say. And think about the consequences of the actions that you've done. And listen to people that are older than yourself, that have been there, the old-fashioned saying is, and have worn the t-shirt. Because I was lucky that I had, because I lost Dad young, there was a lot of the older business people felt sorry for me, and they would give me a bit of guidance, they'd speak to me. So when I was in my 20s, I had 16, 18 people working for me, and I was growing the business. And I was working, and some of them say, Dan, slow down, there's plenty of time. And, you know, enjoy this, enjoy your children. And I think, enjoy the children, there's plenty of time to enjoy the children. But you know, you click your fingers and they're not children anymore. And 40 years has passed you by. So there's so much truth in what they tell you.
Mm-hmm. And what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
I wouldn't say there's just one particular piece. There's a number of different pieces. And respect people and deal with them as you want it to be dealt with in return. And be honest. Be honest with people who you do business with, because it comes through. And stick to what you say you're going to do. It's our thing in our families, but there is no cockers. So a cocker means when you say you're going to do something, you do it. Don't change a word in a sentence to have a different meaning. This is what you said you're going to do on this day at this time, and you do it. This is what we say we have sold this product for, we have sold it. And I have sold products on an handshake and a telephone call, which has been detrimental, and we've lost thousands. But I did it. So you take the good with the bad. It's a seesaw. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Now we've got a little bit of a light-hearted question to end with. This is the second last question. We've got two more. Yeah. If there was a movie to be made about your life, a blockbuster, what would the film be called, and which actor would play you?
Well, luckily, my favourite movie is called Yellowstone, and it's a rancher, and it's Kevin Costner. And I think his life, with being on a ranch and his passion about the ranch, is probably very similar to the passion I have about the business.
Very good answer. Now, the last question we've got is, every podcast, each guest leaves a question for the next guest. So I'll get a question from you for the next guest before we finish. But the question that's been left for you, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received, and how did you realise it was the worst piece of advice?
I'm thinking about it, because as I think about it, I would say advice in business, Danny, don't try and do it all yourself. Leave it with other people. Give them some responsibility. And as the business grows, you need to do that. Sometimes you can get so far away from the business, it's going wrong. And when it starts going wrong, you don't realise it's going wrong until you get to the cold face of it. Is that an answer and advice? It's just my own view of a position in the business.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So now you're going to ask, you're going to say to me, will I give a question?
Yeah. If you could ask any business owner anything, what would you ask them?
If you was rewriting the hymn sheet of life, would you do everything the same?
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't do it the same, would it be experience that'd make you change?
Danny, thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing to get a bit of insight into you and Leo Group. Is there anything else that you would like to say that you haven't had a chance to say?
I think you've asked me things. I've been open. I've said everything from my heart. It's reading no notes. It comes straight from from the heart on what I'm saying and what I believe in. Some's good, some's bad, but most importantly, it's all the truth.
No, that was excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Danny.
You're very welcome.